He's always in a bad mood, so just ignore him. Even when I consult Ian about Alan, he never takes it seriously. It's been 6 months since I remarried Ian, and Alan has started ignoring me and even stopped having meals with us. Alan, at least have some milk, please? Just leave me alone. His voice finally reached me, and it deeply pierced my heart. I don't know how to deal with him. However, one day when I was away overnight, Alan contacted me. Come back home. As soon as I responded to his call and returned home, Alan forcibly dragged me into the attic. Alan's expression was so severe that it sent chills down my spine. I couldn't help but feel terrified of his forceful behavior. What on earth is going on? It's dark and scary. Where is Lily? Where is she? I couldn't get my voice out, and my breathing naturally became labored. Shoo! Alan's warning made me hold my breath. But the real fear was yet to come. I'm Kara, 43 years old. I'm a single mother with a 12-year-old daughter. I divorced my ex-husband about 10 years ago due to personality conflicts. I ended up being treated like a housekeeper by my in-laws. Moreover, they tried to overpower me physically, so I couldn't stand it and ran away with my daughter, Lily. Lily was just 2 years old, and I had to protect her all by myself. Bearing that pressure, I have worked hard all these years. Of course, I worked, and I tried to make sure Lily didn't feel lonely. And Lily has grown into a very energetic girl. One day, when she was in 6th grade, she suddenly asked, "Hey Mom, do you have anyone you like?" Lately, she often talks about how handsome Kevin from her class is, and I found it quite adorable. I never thought I would be dragged into her girl talk. Really? You don't have anyone you like? Mom, you're beautiful, so you must be popular. Why not remarry? I want a kind dad and a handsome big brother. It must be the influence of shoujo manga. But surprisingly, she was quite serious, and she kept encouraging me to date and remarry. As Lily became less dependent on me, I thought maybe it wouldn't be a bad idea. Then, with a light heart, I attended a singles event and met a man I connected with on the first try. His name is Ian, 45 years old. A refreshing man who looks younger than his age, often seen wearing a white polo shirt. He had been through a similar situation, having been divorced with an 8-year-old son. My son also encouraged me to consider remarriage. I've lived for my child for a long time, but maybe it's time to find my own happiness too. Yes. It wasn't a fiery love like in my younger days, but a gentle romance like the warmth of a spring day. Ian's kindness made my heart flutter for the first time in a long while. I was a bit giddy, but there was one thing I couldn't help but worry about. Ian's son, Alan. With remarriage in mind, we had been deepening our bond early on, including the children. Alan, what do you want to eat? Do you like hamburgers? Even when the 4 of us went to a restaurant, Alan always seemed bored. Whatever. I wondered if Alan was really supporting the remarriage with such an attitude. He wouldn't talk to me, and when our eyes met, he would just glare at me. According to Ian, he's just shy. Indeed, when Lily tries to open up to Alan, I occasionally see a cute, embarrassed smile. A quiet and cool little brother isn't bad. Alan might be its under a dot. I've heard from my mom friends that boys often don't talk to their parents at home, so maybe it's normal for adolescents. While struggling with how to handle it, spending time together gradually helped us get closer. Around that time, Lily cheerfully asked Alan, "Hey Alan, Ian and my mom get along well, don't you think they should get married?" I was surprised by her sudden question. But I was curious about his reaction. Oh, yeah. If it's Kara, then it's fine. Whatever. He replied indifferently, but he glanced at me and gave a small smile. A warm joy surged from the center of my being. Finally, I was acknowledged by Alan. I was truly happy from the bottom of my heart. After that, everything went smoothly, and we got married, starting a new life as a family of 4. At Ian's request, we rented a house in a quiet suburban neighborhood, far from the city center. Having lived in the city until now, it was a bit inconvenient, but the house with a large yard and a bright living room seemed like a symbol of a happy family and wasn't bad at all. Just as I was concerned about Alan, Ian gently cared for Lily. Is today's homework math drills? Oh, fractions? I'm really good at mathematics. After dinner, Ian helped with her studies. As the weekend approached, Lily, is there anywhere you want to go? He would ask. I understood the feeling of being more considerate to a stepchild than to a biological one. However, it seemed that Alan wasn't too happy with this situation. It was as if his dad was suddenly taken away by her. I tried to think of Alan and Lily equally, so I subtly mentioned it to Ian in our bedroom. Thank you for always being kind to Lily. Because I'm her dad. I always wanted a daughter. Girls are just so cute. They're honest and adorable, really adorable. He seemed to be trying hard to be a dad. But, because you're always giving Lily attention, Alan seems a bit lonely, doesn't he? When I brought up the main issue, Ian laughed lightly. Alan? He's always grumpy, so I can't tell. Does he even have feelings? Oh, maybe grumpiness is a feeling? Well, I don't know what he's thinking. Just leave him be. Don't worry about it. Huh? It felt different from just favoring a stepchild. Oh, by the way, Lily wants to go to an amusement park on the next holiday. Can you book the tickets? An indescribable sense of discomfort spread in my chest. Was he desperately trying to be liked by Lily? In other words, he was trying to cherish the family. Tickets are $100 per person? Wow, that's expensive. But hey, family smiles are priceless, right? It seemed he had no hesitation in spending $100 for Lily. Speaking of which, when we first started living together, Alan's shoes were worn out and the heels were crushed. When I suggested buying new ones, he refused once with a whatever, so he must have really liked them. But when I half forced him to the shoe store, he looked around with interest and chose new shoes. Alan's shoes cost $39. When I mentioned it to Ian in casual conversation, he slightly furrowed his brows. What? That's expensive for kids' shoes. Everyone has their values, but I felt Ian was a bit too dismissive of Alan. There was one more thing that bothered me about Ian. Hello? Hey, I'm working late today. Around 4 p.m., Ian called cheerfully while at work. His workplace is a factory, and he usually works from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. on weekdays. Sometimes, he has to start early, work late, or even work on weekends. Most of the time, he doesn't know about these schedule changes until the last minute, and he lets me know on the same day. So, that's the case. Thanks for your hard work. Will it be another late night? Yeah, it might be a late night. I might even have to pull an all-nighter. It's really tough. The deadlines are always tight, and the clients often make unreasonable demands, so the manufacturing job seems really hard. Yet, his voice always sounds cheerful. Tell Lily I'm sorry I can't help with her homework. Is he only worried about Lily? I felt a mix of emotions again. Overtime and weekend work have been a part of his life even before we got married. Now, Alan is quiet, but I heard that when he was younger, he would sometimes wander off when Ian wasn't home, and kind strangers would take care of him. So, right after we got married, Ian felt relieved. Kara, it's great that your job doesn't have overtime. It's really helpful having mom at home. This way, we won't get complaints from the neighbors or child services anymore. What a relief! At that time, I didn't think much about it, but looking back, I realize he wasn't happy about avoiding making Alan feel lonely. Ian himself was relieved that he wouldn't be criticized by others anymore. He's definitely not like my ex-husband, who was hot-tempered. He's always smiling and is a gentle person who enjoys conversation. But the complicated feelings inside me remain unresolved. I've talked to my mom friends about it, but they just laughed and said, "Dads are like that." My mom friends then went on to share their complaints about their husbands, competing for the title of the worst husband. Listening to their stories, I thought Ian isn't that bad, but even after venting or hearing about other terrible husbands, my complex feelings didn't disappear. I'm home. Even on the days Ian tells me he'll be working late into the night, he often comes home on time. Huh? Did the overtime get canceled? Yeah. For some reason, when he works late into the night or early morning, he's in a great mood, but when he comes home without working overtime, he's in a bad mood. Isn't it usually the opposite? I wondered but couldn't say anything when Ian was in a bad mood. While I'm concerned about Ian, another problem arises. Alan has started showing a rebellious attitude. When we first got married, he was quiet but seemed relaxed around me. He doesn't call me mom, but I felt he accepted me as someone living under the same roof. Now, 6 months after our marriage, our relationship has worsened. Alan, good morning. Breakfast is ready. Even when I greet him, he glares at me and doesn't touch the food I prepare. It's worrying for an 8-year-old to skip breakfast before going to school. Just the other day, he was making dinner requests, and our relationship seemed fine. Why has it changed? Alan, at least drink some milk, okay? Just leave me alone. His words cut deep into my heart. In a remarriage involving children, it's crucial to respect the child's feelings. Alan initially had high hopes for the new family but seems disappointed now that we're living together. But we are already married. I can't just give up and say, "Okay, I won't be your mom anymore." I have to face Alan, but he keeps pushing me away. Not only breakfast, but for dinner too, Alan pointedly eats instant noodles or junk food. However, she doesn't want to worry Ian, so in front of him, she maintains a facade, eating together and only appearing slightly grumpy. When she consults Ian, he's always grumpy. Just ignore him. It's the same response she's heard before. Then one day, she received news that a local friend had passed away. The burdens of reality and the friend's death weighed heavily on her mind. She couldn't take it anymore. She couldn't handle it all alone. Ian was the one who stood by her, noticing her pale face. "Are you okay? Sudden goodbyes are hard. Leave Lily to me and take your time to say goodbye properly. Your mom at home would be happy to see you. Stay not just for one night, but 2 or 3. Yeah, thanks." At times like this, she felt grateful to be married. Relying on Ian's kindness, she decided to attend the funeral and then stay at her childhood home nearby. Although it was close enough for a day trip, she thought a full day away from Alan might be beneficial, given their recent tensions. However, that night, when she was away from home, Alan called her. "Come back." Could it be that he missed her? For a moment, she thought so, but his voice was cold and low. She thought she heard Lily's voice faintly in the background. "What's wrong? Is Lily with you?" Ignoring her question, Alan gave a brief instruction. "Come back. Don't tell Dad anything." Despite being only 8 years old, he somehow seemed frightening. Before she could say anything, Alan abruptly ended the call. Alan and Lily didn't have their own phones, so they must have called from a public phone, making it impossible for her to call back. It was past 7 p.m. The thought of them walking alone to a public phone at this hour was terrifying. There was only one option: to go home immediately. She kept clutching her mobile phone, debating whether to contact Ian as the bus swayed. But Alan's cold yet somewhat desperate voice telling her not to tell Dad stopped her. She felt the urgency to get home quickly. Her hands were sweaty as she held her mobile phone. She arrived home just past midnight. There were no lights on in the house. Thinking they must have gone to bed, she quietly opened the front door, but suddenly a flashlight beam pierced the darkness. "You're late." The light revealed Alan's figure.
"Sorry, so what is it? What happened?"
"Just hurry."
What?
Alan grabbed her arm tightly and led her to the living room, without explaining anything. Then, she saw car lights outside the window. It looked like Ian's car was parked in the driveway. "This way." He forcefully pulled her, making her climb the small, steep stairs beside the living room. At the top was a loft they used for storage.
"Wait a minute."
She tried to pull her arm away, but Alan's stern expression sent a chill down her spine. The flashlight was turned off. She couldn't see anything. They were engulfed by darkness and silence. She couldn't help but feel scared of Alan's aggressive behavior. "What's going on?" "It's dark, scary. Where's Lily?" "Where is Lily?" My voice wouldn't come out properly, and my breathing naturally became erratic.
"Shoo!"
At Alan's warning, I even stopped breathing. The light in the living room came on. Even so, the light didn't reach the loft. Gradually, my eyes adjusted, and I could faintly see Alan's serious profile emerging from the darkness.
"This is the living room. Pretty nice, right? This sofa, it's an electric sofa, it's really nice."
It was Ian's voice. Even though it was the middle of the night, he had apparently brought a guest.
There's juice in the fridge. Make yourself at home. Feel free to relax."
What is this creepy way of speaking? His voice was trembling with joy, and a nasty laugh escaped. I glanced at Alan, who motioned with his chin, allowing me to look at what was happening below. Leaning forward quietly to avoid making any noise, I peeked into the living room below.
"What?"
I almost screamed and quickly covered my mouth. There was Ian and a girl. She had put on makeup to look mature, but her face still had an innocent look. I had never seen her before. A relative's child, maybe?
"So, how far is okay? I mean, you're staying over, so that's what this is, right?"
The girl's face twisted in disgust. But she quickly composed herself and showed resignation with a "well, okay." Ian's eyes widened, and he began breathing heavily. Like a beast that had lost its reason in front of a defenseless small animal. Even without direct words, it was clear what Ian intended to do to the girl. What the girl had resigned herself to. All the blood rushed to my head, and I was hit with severe dizziness and a headache. Bringing a girl into a house that symbolizes the happiness of a family was unforgivable. More than anything, I couldn't stand the idea of this young girl, who still looked so childlike, becoming a victim of a filthy adult. Thinking that it was not something young Alan should see, I instinctively pushed him back. But then I realized that he had called me because he understood the situation. I gave Alan a big nod. Alan looked straight at me and nodded back.
"So, I already took you to eat at a family restaurant, so you're not hungry, right? Shall we get started? It's okay now, right? My family isn't home today, so don't hold back, okay?"
Spreading his hands beside his face to appear harmless, Ian inched closer to the girl.
Don't be nervous. I'm nice, really.
Finally, he put his hand around the girl's waist and pulled her close. Ian's cheeks flushed as he basked in the feeling of happiness.
I have a child too, only a couple of years younger than you. I'm good with girls, see?
Yes, a girl not much younger than Lily. Is she Ian's affair partner? No, that can't be true. Ian is trying to hurt her deeply. That's not okay.
Hey! Ian!
She rushed down the stairs, almost tripping in her haste.
Kara, why are you here? You were supposed to stay at your parents' place.
Ian, startled, clung to the girl. Get your filthy hands off her right now. She strode over to Ian with large steps and twisted his arm without hesitation.
Ouch! What the? Let go! Let go! How long do you think you can keep touching her?
I was surprised at how much force I suddenly had. Ian's sweaty hand was trembling, and his face twisted with pain.
What were you trying to do to the girl? No, nothing. Don't lie. I've been watching you the whole time. I saw you brat looking at her with those lecherous eyes. No, it's not like that.
If Ian was a beast, then I was the devil. I couldn't believe such filthy words were flowing from my mouth so easily. This was the first time I'd ever raised my voice and called someone brat. It felt like devil horns were about to burst from my head, with the heat and pain swirling inside my mind. I twisted Ian's arm with all my strength, forcing him to the floor. He curled up, protecting his head.
I'm sorry, Kara, I'm sorry.
I felt an urge to kick his pathetic back.
No, it's not what you think. It was a moment of weakness. It wasn't cheating. I didn't betray you, Kara. It was just a mistake. I just met her. It's not cheating. Kara, you're the only one. It's not cheating. I'm sorry.
Maybe the angry aura I had was terrifying, because he kept apologizing desperately. I took a slow, deep breath. So, it was just a moment of weakness? I looked down at Ian's round back and lowered my voice. Hearing my calm voice, the intense anger had subsided, and Ian cautiously raised his face.
Kara! I know, it must have been shocking out of nowhere. I'm really sorry. I gave in to temptation.
He was smart to keep apologizing, knowing he couldn't escape from the situation with me, his wife, having caught him red-handed. Admitting his fault honestly might help reduce my anger to a minimum. But that tactic only worked if it was a normal kind of cheating.
So, you brought a girl home because I wasn't here, and it was just a mistake? Yes. I'm sorry, it won't happen again.
Even though Ian showed deep remorse, I didn't smile at him yet.
It won't happen a second time. Yes. But I won't forgive even the first time. But, I'm apologizing.
With my anger still not subsiding, Ian frowned slightly and bit his lip, realizing nothing he did would be enough.
If sorry was enough, we wouldn't need the police.
Ian mumbled so softly I almost couldn't hear it. Damn, you're being dramatic. That one phrase lit the fuse of my anger once more.
What did you say?
Ian, crouching and apologizing repeatedly, finally showed his true colors when forgiveness was not forthcoming.
That's why I'm apologizing. What else do you want me to do? Can't I be forgiven for even one mistake?
This isn't a children's quarrel where a simple sorry and it's okay would suffice. It's incomprehensible why the offender thinks a mere apology at the moment would suffice, such selfish thinking. Just then, Alan, who had somehow been standing behind me, spoke up. If it's just this once and it was only an attempt, maybe we can forgive him.
Alan.
It seemed Ian had only now noticed Alan's presence. Feeling awkward for being seen in this disgraceful state by his own son, he reluctantly accepted Alan's unexpected support.
Oh, Alan, you think so too, right? Mom is overreacting. Family is different from friends or lovers. Even if you make a big mistake, they're the ones who will comfort you and say it's okay. Alan, isn't family great? New mom, Kara, is someone with that kind heart.
If I had heard this grand speech at another time, I might have liked Ian even more. He could eloquently say wonderful things, which is the Ian I loved. But now, knowing he's just a womanizer. No matter how many lovely speeches he gives, it feels chilling. Family, huh? That's quite convenient. Even within family, there are lines you shouldn't cross.
Huh?
Ian's face showed panic as Alan, who was supposed to be on his side, started saying something unsettling. No, it's not just about family, there are lines you shouldn't cross as a person. Ian was bewildered, but I understood what Alan was getting at. The girl Ian had brought home was sitting on the sofa, completely indifferent to the family's turmoil. I spoke to her. How old are you? 15. Her voice was thin. Though she looked bored, she was likely extremely anxious, having been brought into a stranger's home and unexpectedly witnessing a huge argument, regardless of her agreement. Don't worry. Even though she used mature makeup as a shield, she was still just a child. I gently rubbed her back as she averted her eyes. Then I turned to Ian. There won't be a second time. Even the first time is unforgivable. What Ian did is a one-strike and you're out situation. Ian gritted his teeth and glared resentfully at the girl who had revealed his secret.
I didn't know. I thought she was around 20.
Lacking the composure to act, he loudly and rudely spat out.
She said on social media she had no money and no place to stay tonight, so I was just 100% trying to help her out of goodwill. I'm not the bad guy. She deceived me. Trapped me. I'm the victim here.
Ian brazenly shifted the blame. But his victim act lasted only 10 seconds. Alan took a mobile phone out of his pocket and played a video.
I fed you and gave you a place to stay, so it's only fair I get something in return, right?
Ian's sleazy voice echoed from the phone. It seemed to be a covert recording at the entrance of the apartment where Ian and Alan used to live. The room's details were kept out of frame to protect the girl's privacy, but Ian's gleeful voice was clearly heard. Just before, pushed by Ian into the entrance, all the girls were still childlike. Even once is unforgivable. Though it wasn't just once. The phone Alan displayed had a cracked screen. It seemed he had used Ian's old and used phone. Before we got remarried, sometimes when I was kicked out, I'd leave my phone by the door. And that's how I got this video. Alan, who had been an ally, suddenly turned against Ian. As undeniable evidence was presented, Ian's face turned pale.
No, it's not like that,
Ian's lips just trembled, unable to come up with a convincing line to persuade me. Bringing a girl home today, was it just a momentary lapse in judgment? Did he offer a safe place to sleep out of pure goodwill to a girl with nowhere to go? Who would believe such an obvious lie? I pulled out my own phone and dialed 3 numbers. 911. It was an emergency call. 911, what is your emergency? I answered their question. It's an incident.
What? Where? Who are you calling?
Ian tried to snatch the phone from me, but he seemed weak, his body trembling like a fawn's. I dodged and explained the situation to 911. With just the minimal explanation, 911 understood and said the police were on their way.
No way, 911? You didn't really call 911, did you? It's a bluff, right?
I called. Ian clutched his head and screamed.
Horrible. Why? You didn't have to make it such a big deal.
He threw himself to the floor in a dramatic display, apologizing frantically.
Sorry. I'll never do it again. I swear I love only Kara. I swear to God. I'm sorry, so sorry.
He still didn't grasp the seriousness of the situation. No, he must have understood but was choosing to look away.
The one you should be apologizing to isn't me.
I grabbed Ian's head as he groveled on the floor, forcing his face up and turning it towards the girl standing in shock.
As an adult, what the hell do you think you're doing? If you need to apologize, it's to her, not me. But I didn't do anything. What? Even an attempt is a crime.
Ian shrieked again, cowering under my intense anger. He banged his forehead against the floor.
I'm sorry.
He managed to bow his head toward the girl.
All these sorries, they sound so insincere. Do you really think you're at fault? Do you understand the weight of your crime? Eek!
Ian, thoroughly frightened, screamed every time I opened my mouth.
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Please forgive me.
My rage was beyond anything I'd ever felt in over 40 years of life.
If sorry was enough, we wouldn't need the police. Then why make me apologize? I've said sorry over and over. What more do you want me to do?
Ian couldn't hold back his frustration and yelled. But he quickly realized and gave me a sad smile.
I love Kara. I won't stray anymore. The video Alan showed you, that was from the past, right? If you're going to blame me for cheating before a remarriage, that's a bit much.
The word love from his mouth made me sick.
Impossible. Kara.
Cheating is a terrible betrayal, but not a crime. Whether to forgive or not is up to the person involved. If he showed genuine remorse, maybe a second chance could be given. But Ian was different. He crossed the line by involving people he shouldn't have.
No matter how many apologies, it won't be enough. No matter how many times you say sorry, the crime doesn't disappear. What Ian did is that serious. Deceiving a naive child and committing such vile acts, Ian, you're a monster.
I shouted without holding back. Ian's breathing grew heavy, and he clutched at his chest as if in pain.
You're kidding me.
The words Ian managed to squeeze out were unexpected.
You're calling me a demon? Are you kidding? I'm a god. To these runaway girls with nowhere to go, I'm like a god. I'm their savior.
Being called a demon seemed to have struck a nerve, and Ian began to boast about his actions. I'm helping these girls. I'm protecting them. If protecting them is a crime, then you'd rather have them out on the dangerous streets at night? Kara, you're a cold-hearted person. I'm disappointed.
So, when you protect them, you look at them with lustful eyes. It's give and take in this world. When someone is kind to you, you have to show gratitude. What's wrong with expecting something in return? I'm a god. The girls worship me. Isn't it an honor for them to be with a god instead of being attacked by some unknown man? Right? Isn't that right?
Incredibly, Ian sought agreement from the disillusioned girl on the sofa.
So, I'm not wrong.
Ian spread his arms wide, fully embodying his self-proclaimed godhood. As he basked in this delusion, someone approached him from behind. A hand patted Ian on the shoulder. All right, God. let's continue this conversation at the police.
Huh?
A man in a police uniform had placed his hand on Ian's shoulder and was smiling. While Ian was grandstanding, Alan had quietly left the living room and brought in the police.
Wait, really? The police? Kara, did you seriously call the cops?
Ian's face twisted into a half-smile of panic. I nodded quietly. You can't just ignore a crime happening right in front of you.
But it was all consensual.
The grip on Ian's shoulder tightened. We'll hear more about that at the station. Let's go.
Wait, no. Kara? You betrayed me? Why, we're family.
Ian, still defiant, was urged out the door by the officer. He reached out to me for help. But I had no intention of taking his hand. Noticing my cold expression, Ian's eyes darted to Alan.
Alan.
Desperately, he called out to Alan. Wait a moment. Alan stopped the officer. Ian's tear-filled eyes showed a glimmer of hope. Take this cell phone with you. The officer looked puzzled, so I explained. It contains videos of his past misdeeds. Alan added. And this is the phone he used to have. It's full of creepy messages with the girls. The hope in Ian's eyes quickly faded, as his own son handed over evidence that would ruin him.
Alan. You're abandoning me, your dad?
Ian's voice, filled with anger and desperation, croaked out. Alan, who had remained stoic in the face of Ian's behavior, finally showed his disgust. You abandoned me first. You left me to play around with young girls. Ian could only clench his jaw, unable to retort. He seemed ready to silence Alan with force, but the officer's presence kept him in check. Soon, more officers arrived, and Ian was handcuffed by two of them. The girl on the sofa, who had been curled up in fear, was safely taken into protective custody. Ian glared resentfully at Alan and me as he was led away by the police. Ian was neither a god nor a dad. I gently put my arm around his shoulder. In my arms, Alan's tension finally eased. Ian had tried to claim to the police that it was protective custody, that it was consensual, but such excuses were never going to be accepted. He seemed to always be on the lookout for girls he could lure. Of course, all his overtime was a lie. It was common for him to break promises and not show up, which is why his sudden end to enjoyable overtime wasn't surprising. He became notorious nationwide as a despicable criminal who preyed on vulnerable children.
They meant no harm. I just wanted to see my family.
He reportedly said this to the police. Ian, thoroughly dejected, requested that I bring Lily to visit him, but the thought of exposing her to his gaze, even with a barrier between them, was revolting. So I went to see Ian alone.
You came. Oh. Where's Lily?
I didn't respond to his question. I came for the visit, but not to engage in pointless conversation. I brought you something.
Oh, thank you.
Don't get the wrong idea. It's the divorce papers. Oh. The smile vanished from Ian's lips. Did you think you had the right to refuse? Sign them quickly. With those words, I stood up. Seeing him slumped behind the acrylic barrier, I knew that even if he got out in a few years, there would be no family waiting for him. Perhaps out of spite, Ian refused to sign, but after the divorce, I took Alan in. At first, Alan felt guilty and out of place, but after a few months of living with the three of us, he got used to it. He remarried to have someone take care of me. There was a lot of pressure from those around him. He needed someone to be a mom. He had been neglected for most of his life. Understanding Ian's true intentions, he was hesitant about the remarriage but came to want a family after experiencing kindness from me and Lily. But there was another reason he wanted to get married. Lily. Just being near the adorable Lily was enough to make Ian happy. But he wanted more than that. That day, when Kara was out, he saw it as a chance. He tried to get rid of me to be alone with Lily. Realizing this, Alan managed to get Lily to a friend's house. I was grateful to the friend's family for taking Lily in so unexpectedly. I'm sorry for all the trouble he caused. Alan had been cold to me because he understood Ian's inappropriate gaze towards Lily. It hurt to think how much the child had suffered, trying to protect others. Alan, it's not your fault. Thank you for protecting Lily and me.
Yeah.
He smiled. A dimple appeared on his right cheek, looking very cute. From now on, you can lean on me. You're still just a kid, Alan. I thought it best not to treat him too much like a child, so I just patted his shoulder. Then Lily came running in. After hugging me, she ruffled his hair like a playful puppy.
That's right. You're still a kid, Alan, so rely on Mom and me. Stop it.
Despite his strong protests, his ticklish smile was indeed adorable. Both Lily and Alan are my precious children. I want to protect their innocent smiles forever.
We're getting engaged,
the young woman declares happily across the counter, her eyes sparkling with joy and excitement. This is a high-end jewelry store that specializes in precious stones and breathtaking designs. I work here as a sales associate, helping customers find the perfect piece to symbolize their love and commitment. And the man standing next to the woman who just announced their engagement is none other than my husband, Mick. When we first met, I was instantly drawn to Mick's bright smile and reliable demeanor. He had a way of making me feel safe and cherished, and I knew I wanted to spend the rest of my life with him. But about 6 months into our marriage, things started to change. Mick began taking more business trips and working late nights at the office. I tried to be understanding, telling myself that he was just working hard to provide for our future. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. And then, on this fateful day, my worst fears were confirmed. Mick walked into the very store where I was filling in for a colleague, arm in arm with a young woman I had never seen before. Even though it was just a coincidence, seeing Mick with another woman felt like a punch to the gut. My vision blurred and my heart raced as I tried to process what was happening. An engagement ring? What did this mean? In an instant, all the trust and love I had for Mick, all the happy memories we had shared, they all shattered into a million pieces right before my eyes.
I'm so adored by him.
The young woman, who I later learned was named Amos, gushed to me, completely oblivious to the fact that I was Mick's wife.
He calls me multiple times a day, always picks me up and drops me off when we go out, and buys me anything I say I like. I'm so loved. I feel like the luckiest girl in the world.
As Amos went on and on about how wonderful Mick was, I couldn't help but think about all the times I had wondered why our savings weren't growing as fast as they should have been, given Mick's salary. Now I knew the answer. He had been lavishing his mistress with gifts and attention, all while neglecting his own wife. Mick, meanwhile, had finally noticed my presence and was shifting uncomfortably from foot to foot, his face twisted into a guilty grimace. Fighting back the urge to scream or cry or both, I somehow managed to plaster on my best customer service smile and speak in an overly cheerful voice.
Is that so? Congratulations! If you're looking for a diamond engagement ring, we have some stunning new designs in this display case over here.
Then, I turned to look directly at Mick, my gaze unwavering as I continued.
And for you, sir, I have a special recommendation.
When Mick saw what I was holding out to him, the color drained from his face, and his mouth began to tremble. I felt a bitter laugh bubbling up inside me, so different from the fake smile I had been forcing. Because what I had thrust in front of Mick's face was a divorce certificate application, already signed by yours truly.
Just add your signature here, and our divorce will be finalized. Feel free to go and be happy with your little side piece.
My name is Lena. And I'm a 29-year-old woman working at a well-known jewelry store. The store where I work carries a wide variety of accessories, and the interior is always clean, bright, and glittering with promise. Customers come in searching for the perfect piece adorned with rubies, sapphires, pearls, opals, and more, each one hoping to find something that will make them feel special and loved. Whether they're shopping for an anniversary gift or a little treat for themselves, everyone's face lights up when they see our beautiful selection. But the one thing that outshines everything else in the store? The diamonds, of course. Delicately cut and set into stunning rings, they sparkle and shine from their prime location in the center of the showroom, drawing every eye with their timeless beauty and elegance. And of course, most of the customers who come in to buy these stunning pieces are couples in love or newlyweds, their eyes shining with anticipation and joy. Watching these happy duos choose their perfect symbol of commitment, make their purchase, and walk out hand in hand, their faces glowing with excitement, it's impossible not to feel a swell of vicarious happiness. Selling sparkle and bliss, that's what this job is all about. And I take great pride in what I do. As for my own love life, well, I've always been so captivated by the allure of working in a jewelry store that romance has taken a bit of a back seat. Day after day, I'd watch the lovers and spouses who came into the shop, feeling pangs of longing. But the more I threw myself into my work, the less time I seemed to have for putting myself out there and finding my own special someone. My friend Vanessa, noticing my perpetually single status, decided to take matters into her own hands and set me up with a guy she knew. That guy turned out to be Mick, my future husband. Mick was 6 years older than me and worked in the sales department of an electronics company. I was immediately drawn to his outgoing nature, his way with words, and his perpetually sunny disposition. But he also had a serious side, really listening intently when it came to important matters. After just a few dates, I knew with absolute certainty that if I were to marry anyone, it would be him. I made the first move and confessed my feelings, and we started officially dating. About 6 months into our relationship, I brought up the topic of marriage. These days, there's no shame in a woman taking the lead when it comes to tying the knot. I confidently and assertively moved our marriage talks forward. At first, Mick said it was too soon. But as I passionately made my case for why getting married and starting a family sooner rather than later was the way to go, he came around to the idea. It probably helped that a lot of people in Mick's circle were getting hitched around that time too.
Hearing everyone's stories made me realize I needed to really think seriously about marriage myself. And when I think about our future children, getting married to you now just makes the most sense,
he told me. From there, things progressed smoothly, meeting each other's families, making preparations. I had lost my mother to illness when I was too young to remember her, and had been raised by a single father. So when I brought home my husband-to-be, my dad Danny was so overjoyed that he cried until his eyes were red and puffy. "Lena, you've been through so much, growing up without a mother. I was happy enough just seeing you land your dream job and work so hard. But now you've found yourself such a wonderful husband too. I'm so glad I was able to raise you to this point," he said, choking up. Mick and I comforted Danny together, vowing silently to give him even more peace of mind from here on out. Mick's parents were lovely people too, and I hit it off with them right away. My mother-in-law Juliet was so moved by the fact that I worked in a jewelry store. She asked me all about my job and the gems we sold, and I was more than happy to chat with her about it all. The conversation flowed effortlessly. Juliet listened with such empathy as I opened up about my upbringing too. "I think I've gotten the hang of most household tasks, but it's probably just the bare minimum for my dad and I to get by. I'm a bit nervous that there might be a lot I'm lacking when it comes to supporting Mick," I confessed. Juliet just laughed.
"You've worked so hard to get to where you are. That's more than enough. And if there's ever anything you're unsure about, just ask me,"
she said. Throughout our engagement and into our married life, Juliet was always there for me, patiently teaching me the ins and outs of managing a household. When it came to cooking especially, I learned so much from her. How to make a flavorful broth, the best ways to store ingredients, the secrets to a hearty, comforting stew, tips for bringing out the savory goodness in a roasted turkey. And never once did Juliet look down on me or make me feel foolish for the things I didn't know. She always explained everything with such kindness and care. Before I knew it, I had grown to adore her, to trust her like the mother I'd never had. Mick's job in sales kept him busy, but he had a strict policy of not bringing work home. He never did overtime from the house or went out with colleagues on his days off. Thanks to that, whenever Mick was home, he was able to devote his time and attention fully to me. Even after we got married, Mick and I remained as close as ever, chatting and laughing over meals, going on weekend drives and movie dates. He never once complained about my struggles with household chores. In fact, he would even praise the dishes I made while practicing Juliet's recipes. Of course, there were times when things got hectic at work and he'd have to stay late at the office or go on overnight business trips. But having watched my dad work tirelessly to raise me on his own, I actually found Mick's dedication to his job rather reassuring. As much as I missed him, I was more than happy to cheer him on. I had continued working after we married too, and there was something deeply fulfilling about being a couple who both took pride in our careers. It wasn't until about 6 months into our marriage that I started to feel the first stirrings of unease. Mick's job was as demanding as ever, but gradually, his business trips and late nights began to increase in frequency. It used to be that he'd only have to put in extra hours around the end of the month, and overnight trips were limited to once or twice in that same time frame. But now, regardless of the time of month, he was coming home late more often than not, and his travel seemed to have doubled. Thinking there must be some reason for the uptick in his busyness, I asked Mick about it casually, not wanting to read into things.
There's a chance I might be up for a promotion soon. And if I want to make that happen, I need to be delivering bigger results than ever before. Now's the time to really buckle down and prove myself,
he explained. It was a story I'd heard plenty of times before, putting in the extra effort at work when a raise or promotion was on the line. And as his wife, of course I was thrilled at the prospect of Mick advancing in his career. I told him as much, assuring him I completely understood and that I'd be rooting for him to clinch that promotion. I even mentioned it to Juliet during one of our regular phone chats. Her response gave me a moment's pause. That boy, for better or worse, isn't really the type to push himself too hard at work, she mused, sounding a bit perplexed. In the end, we both agreed that hopefully things would settle down for him sooner rather than later, and left it at that. But as the next month rolled around with no word of a promotion, I started to worry. I didn't want to nag Mick or make him feel like I was pressuring him about moving up in the company. I was working too, after all, and the last thing I wanted was to come across as some kind of money-grubbing leech. But by that point, Mick was spending nearly every week away from home, and even on the weekdays he was back, he was consistently getting in well past midnight. It felt like he'd all but stopped making time for our marriage. Needless to say, the baby we'd been planning for had yet to make an appearance. We could barely even find a moment to be together as husband and wife, let alone start a family. Is this busy period at work going to last much longer? I'm worried all this overtime might take a toll on your health, I ventured, trying to keep my tone light and casual. Mick barely glanced up from his phone, his fingers tapping away at the screen as he replied distractedly. Yeah, it's probably going to be like this for a while. Our department's been told to really step it up, so we don't get left in the dust by the others. I watched him, waiting for more, but he just kept his eyes glued to that damn device. After a few minutes, he finally pocketed it and turned to me, his voice brusque and businesslike, as if our earlier conversation had never happened.
By the way, I've got another business trip next week. I'll be gone, so just do whatever. Wait, another trip? Which days? I asked, trying to mask the sinking feeling in my gut. Thursday through Saturday, 3 days. Don't worry about the house or anything. Anyway, see ya.
And with that, Mick turned his back on me and walked out of the room, leaving me alone with my swirling thoughts. It was true that even when work got hectic, Mick never really complained or expressed dissatisfaction about our home life. There was a stretch when I was so swamped at the store that I let the cleaning slide, but he didn't say a word about it. I used to think that was a sign of his kindness, his understanding. But now, I could see it for what it really was. Not love or compassion, but pure, simple neglect. Did I even matter to Mick at all anymore? How had we gotten to this point? And then there was the thing I hadn't managed to tell him before he walked away. My job required the occasional business trip too, rare as they were. The store I worked for was a nationwide chain, which meant that sometimes, I had to fill in at other locations when they were short-staffed. Usually, it was just the shops in our immediate area trading employees back and forth. But this time, they were in such a bind that I was being sent to a store nearly 2 hours away by car. And as luck would have it, my trip coincided exactly with the dates of Mick's upcoming travel. Given how little he seemed to care about our household these days, I doubted he'd have any objections to me being gone and unable to take care of things. But more than that, there was something about this particular set of trips that left me feeling uneasy. I picked up my phone and fired off a quick message to a certain someone. Their reply came through almost immediately, so I decided to follow up with a call. Then, the next week arrived. I saw Mick off as he left for his alleged business trip, and then promptly set out on my own journey. After a long couple of hours on the road, I was already tired by the time I pulled into the parking lot of my destination store. But work beckoned, so I steeled myself and headed inside. As soon as I entered, a woman caught my eye and waved me over. I waved back, a genuine smile breaking through my exhaustion as I hurried to join her. She worked at this particular branch. We'd actually started at the company around the same time and had gone through training together. Her name was Vanessa. When I found out I'd be traveling here, I'd reached out to see if we might be on the same shift. And on the very day Mick had informed me of his own upcoming trip, it was Vanessa I'd called up to discuss a hunch that had been nagging at the back of my mind. Vanessa wasn't just a colleague, she was a true confidant, the kind of irreplaceable best friend you could turn to for advice and heart-to-hearts about anything and everything.
Thank you so much for making the trip out here,
she said, her warm smile radiating genuine affection. Of course. I'm so happy we get to work together. Here's to the next 3 days. I grinned back, feeling a surge of gratitude for her steadfast presence in my life. With our little reunion complete, we both set about tackling our respective tasks for the day. Since we worked for the same brand, the day-to-day operations were pretty much identical from store to store. Whenever I hit a snag or had a question, Vanessa was right there to guide me through it, and I soon found myself settling into a comfortable rhythm. It was early afternoon when it happened. I was holed up in the employee lounge, plugging away at some paperwork, when I heard the electronic chime that signaled a new customer had entered the store. Out on the sales floor, I could hear Vanessa's muffled voice as she greeted the newcomer with a polite,
"Welcome to our store, sir. How may I assist you today?"
Call it force of habit, but I found myself rising from my chair and edging closer to the door, curious to catch a glimpse of our latest patron. As I peered out from my hidden vantage point, I felt the blood drain from my face, my breath catching in my throat. Because there, standing mere feet away from my unsuspecting best friend, was none other than my very own husband, Mick. What in the world was he doing here? It was the middle of the day, shouldn't he be at work? Unless, no. It couldn't be. There was no way his business trip just happened to coincide with my own in both timing and destination. And yet, the proof was right there in front of me, clear as day. The man standing in the middle of that showroom, looking entirely too casual and carefree to be on the clock, was undoubtedly my spouse. But if he wasn't here for work, then what exactly was he up to? I was just about to step out and confront him directly when the chime sounded again, heralding the arrival of another customer. A young woman, probably in her early 20s at most, came bounding into the store with a giddy smile, making a beeline straight for Mick.
Hey, no fair going in without me.
The young woman, oblivious to Mick's frozen state, looped her arm through his, pressing herself against him with a familiarity that made my stomach churn. She chattered away, her words lost to me as I stood there, rooted to the spot, my mind reeling. What the hell was happening right now? Who was this girl, this brazen hussy, clinging to my husband like she owned him? Vanessa, my best friend, the one who had been there on my wedding day. There was no way she didn't recognize the man who had just walked into our store. The man who was supposed to be my loving, faithful partner. As if sensing my turmoil, Vanessa glanced back towards the employee lounge where I stood hidden, her eyes meeting mine with a look of profound understanding and sympathy. She gave me a subtle nod, a silent promise that she had my back, no matter what. I nodded in return, my heart hammering against my ribs as I braced myself for whatever fresh hell was about to unfold. Without missing a beat, Vanessa turned back to the oblivious couple, her customer service smile firmly in place as she addressed them in a voice that was just a touch too bright to be entirely natural.
Is there anything specific I can help you find today?
I pressed myself against the wall, straining to hear every word of the impending interaction, my breath coming in shallow gasps as I fought to maintain my composure. We're looking for a diamond ring. The girl's high-pitched voice rang out, setting my teeth on edge with its grating sweetness.
Of course. We have some stunning new designs in this display case over here. Or if you prefer something more classic and understated, these styles are always very popular with our customers.
Vanessa's tone was polite but distant as she walked them through their options, ever the consummate professional.
Is this for a special occasion?
She asked, her words carefully neutral. And then, the answer that shattered my world into a million jagged pieces. Yes, it's for our engagement. We're looking for the perfect ring to symbolize our love. In that moment, it felt like all the air had been sucked out of the room, leaving me gasping and dizzy. I staggered back, my hand flying to my mouth to stifle the sob that threatened to tear itself from my throat. What did she just say? An engagement ring? But the man standing next to her, the man she was looking to pledge her life to, that was Mick. My husband. The jewelry shop is a place that delivers happiness to customers along with the brilliance of gemstones. And yet, in such a place of happiness, my happiness was shattered. My heart starts racing. Though my head feels like it's burning hot, my heart is growing increasingly cold, as if it's freezing. With trembling hands, I reach out across the office table. There, something was placed.
Oh my, are you two getting engaged?
Yes. As soon as possible, right, honey? The woman's voice rang out, seeking Mick's agreement. But no response came from him. I struggled to breathe, my chest tight with pain. Steeling myself, I straightened my spine and stepped back out onto the sales floor.
Welcome. I see you're looking for a diamond ring,
I said, putting on my brightest smile as I approached the couple. Mick's eyes widened in shock at my sudden appearance, his face turning a sickly shade of pale as he began to tremble. That's right. The latest designs are so cute, but something classic might be better for long-term wear. It's a tough choice. His mistress chattered away, her smile blissfully unaware that she was face to face with the wife of the man beside her.
I understand. It's an important decision, so please take your time and consider carefully. We have some catalogs here for you to browse as well.
I handed them a selection of jewelry catalogs, my customer service mask firmly in place. Then, I turned to Mick.
And for you, sir, I have a special recommendation.
The moment he saw what I was holding out to him, Mick's eyes bulged even further, his unfocused gaze darting nervously to my face. I met his panicked stare head-on, my practiced smile unwavering. Because what I had handed my husband was a divorce application, already signed by yours truly. A while back, when Mick's overtime and business trips first started to increase, I had reached out to Juliet with my concerns. Not long after, Juliet happened to be grabbing a bite near Mick's office when she spotted him slipping off into the night with a young woman on his arm. Of course, she immediately reported back to me. It was a busy restaurant, so he might not have noticed me there. But because you had just mentioned your worries about him, I guess I was unconsciously on the lookout. That's the only reason I managed to catch him in the act. So Mick's affair had been blown wide open, at least to Juliet and myself. On top of that, as his promises of a promotion grew more and more vague while his absences from home only increased, I had hired a private investigator to look into his activities. Juliet's testimony was credible, but at the time, we didn't have concrete proof that Mick and this mystery woman were actually involved in anything untoward. The results of the PI's investigation came to light sooner than I expected. Probably because Mick's cheating was so blatant, so shameless, that it only took a professional a few days to uncover the truth. Nearly every day, Mick could be seen whining and dining with his mistress in the bustling entertainment district near his office, before sneaking off to a hotel. And at least once a week, they would spend the entire night together. Within 2 weeks, I had a stack of damning photographs. His partner in infidelity was a woman named Amos. The same Amos who was currently simpering at my sales counter, picking out an engagement ring with my husband. And at the very same time I had hired the PI, I was also confiding in Vanessa, my coworker who was out on the floor with the duplicitous couple at this very moment. I so badly wanted to believe in Mick, the man I loved with all my heart. Vanessa had initially been supportive of that desire, doing her best to soothe my worries. But everything changed when the results from the private investigator came in. I sobbed into the phone, shocked to my core, as Vanessa tried to comfort me even as she made no attempt to hide her fury towards Mick.
Cheating on you with some mistress, that's the lowest of the low. And barely coming home anymore? It's like he doesn't care about you at all, Lena. I can't stand seeing you suffer like this.
Thank you, Ness. Hey, in a situation like this, do you think it's better to just get a divorce? My heart felt like it was being ripped in two as I posed the question. Vanessa was silent for a moment before replying slowly. It's your life, your decision. I don't want to push you into anything. But if you're asking for my honest opinion, I think you should leave him, Lena. You're a gorgeous, talented, and amazing woman. You could find someone so much better in a heartbeat. You really think so? Thank you for listening, and for being there for me. Vanessa had reassured me then that we would get together soon for a long heart-to-heart. And as luck would have it, not long after, I was assigned to help out at her store for a few days. Since Mick never told me where his supposed business trips were taking him, running into him here had been a complete coincidence. But it seemed my best friend had been looking out for me, because somehow, she had gotten her hands on divorce papers. During our lunch break, Vanessa had handed me the documents with an apologetic smile. I'm so sorry for jumping the gun like this. I know getting divorced is a huge, scary step. It has to be your choice, Lena. I just wanted you to have these, in case you ever felt ready to use them. Even after learning of Mick's infidelity, I hadn't been able to bring myself to initiate a divorce. I had married him with such dreams of a perfect future together. Vanessa must have sensed my hesitation and taken it upon herself to get the paperwork in order, giving me the power to make the final call. I never would have guessed I'd be using those papers so soon. But seeing Mick with Amos, watching their betrayal play out right in front of me, it had crystallized my resolve. So while Vanessa kept the duplicitous pair distracted, I had hastily scrawled my signature on the divorce application and strode out to confront my cheating husband head-on.
What the hell is this?
Mick stammered, his face draining of color as he began to tremble. He was wearing a suit I had picked out for him, his hair styled to perfection. All for Amos. The sight of it made my skin crawl with revulsion. but I kept my customer service smile firmly in place as I addressed him.
Is there something about this particular item that interests you, sir? I'd be more than happy to discuss the details with you in private. Right this way, please.
And with that, I ushered Mick and Amos into the back office. Mick was visibly uneasy, his head bowed and his steps heavy as he followed me. Amos, on the other hand, seemed blissfully unaware of the situation, her brow furrowed in confusion even as a smile played on her lips. I gestured for them to take a seat, then fixed Mick with a steely gaze.
Who is this woman? And what's this about an engagement ring? I've had my suspicions about your recent behavior, but I never thought I'd stumble upon such blatant evidence of your cheating. Well, this clinches it. I need you to sign these papers, Mick.
I was no longer wearing the mask of a smiling saleswoman, but the face of a wife confronting her husband's infidelity. Mick shook his head vehemently, his lips trembling.
What the hell are you talking about? Divorce papers? I just happened to stop by this store for work. This woman is just a colleague here on business. Accusing me of cheating based on that? You're way out of line.
His composure slipping, Mick tried to cover his tracks with angry bluster.
I'm not out of line at all. I have even more evidence of your affair with Amos.
I started to retort, but Amos cut me off.
Wait, are you his wife? Oh my God, what a crazy coincidence. Wow, you look kind of old and tired, huh?
Amos flashed me a smug grin, clearly relishing the chance to throw me off balance as she prattled on.
I know this must sting, but we're seriously so in love. He calls and texts me constantly, always picks me up and drops me off when we go out, buys me anything I even hint at wanting. I'm totally spoiled rotten. He worships the ground I walk on.
She gushed about how adored she was, her voice dripping with self-satisfaction. I could only glare at her in disgust and disbelief. Mick shifted uncomfortably, his expression strained.
You know how men only truly adore one woman in their whole life? Obviously, he's going to choose a young, sweet thing like me over some near-30 hag. Wait, just wait a minute.
Mick interrupted his gloating mistress, his voice raised.
Lena, hang on, she's got it all wrong. She's just a junior colleague, tagging along for sales calls, that's it.
I met his desperate excuses with cool detachment.
Is it normal for your job to involve taking new hires to jewelry stores on sales runs?
Mick sputtered, at a loss for words. He might think I was hitting below the belt, but I was only stating the obvious. His brow furrowed, his face crumpling as if he might cry. But his wounded act only fueled my anger. I was the one who deserved to be in tears right now. It was a momentary lapse in judgment. She's a new hire, so naive and cute. But I swear, it ends now. Marriage is completely off the table. Please, I'm begging you, forgive me. Mick braced his hands on the desk and bowed his head in a deep, pleading apology. Amos's eyes went wide with shock.
What? What are you saying? You told me you were going to divorce her and marry me. You shut your mouth.
Mick snapped at her, making her flinch back in fear. I watched their back and forth, my expression unchanging as I shook my head.
Trying to backpedal now is pointless. I can't trust a word you say. And even if you did end things with Amos, the fact remains that you've been neglecting our marriage to carry on this affair for who knows how long. I can't stay with you after that. Let's get divorced today. Go on, sign the papers. Now. You can't expect me to just sign something like that out of the blue. Why are you two even fighting? Mick says he loves me the most.
Mick refused to sign, and Amos chimed in once again.
Let me make this crystal clear. I have evidence of all your indiscretions from a private investigator, and Juliet knows everything too. Don't think you can wriggle your way out of this. Divorce is your only option. If you won't sign, I'll take you to court.
With that, I folded the divorce papers and shoved them forcefully into Mick's pocket. Seizing the opportunity, Mick grabbed my arm in a vice-like grip.
Don't do anything crazy. I said I'll make things right, that I'm breaking it off with her. You're hurting me. Let go. And stop making a scene in the store.
As we grappled, Amos inserted herself into the fray once more.
Why are you leaving me? What's so great about your old hag of a wife?
1 minute he was piling on the excuses, the next he was petulantly refusing to divorce. And every time we tried to talk, Amos would interrupt to brag about her relationship with Mick. Nothing we said seemed to get through to either of them. Seeing me at my wit's end, Vanessa picked up the store phone. She quickly called security, probably sensing the danger as Mick put his hands on me. Within minutes, both Mick and his mistress were being dragged out of the store by security guards. Mick looked disgruntled to the very end, but he had brought this on himself with his cheating. It was all his own fault.
That was rough. But you were so brave, standing up for yourself and declaring you want a divorce.
Inside the store, which had regained its former peace and quiet, Vanessa smiled at me. No, in the end, I'm partly to blame for causing a disturbance. I'm sorry for the trouble I've caused the store. And thank you for having those divorce papers ready. I've been carrying them around because I was worried about you. The choice is yours, but I just want you to be happier. Nodding, I felt tears spring to my eyes. I had a best friend rooting for me. Juliet and my own father were watching over me too. I resolved then and there that I wouldn't let this break me, that I'd find happiness on my own terms. And when I returned home after finishing my stint at the other store, it seemed Mick had beaten me there. His shoes and coat were in the entryway. Just seeing them was enough to fill me with a chill of pure loathing.
Look, I mean it. I'm done with that girl. So please, reconsider the divorce.
Mick was waiting for me in the living room, groveling with deep apologies. But no amount of bowing and scraping now could undo his repeated betrayals. Besides, Vanessa had once told me that cheaters never really change their ways. Even if I called off the divorce because of his desperate pleas, who's to say he wouldn't do the same thing again down the line? I was done being deceived.
All this time, you've been lying about work to go see Amos.
I said it coldly, then retrieved the photos I'd gotten from the PI, laying them out in front of Mick. His face twisted with chagrin.
After everything you've done, do you have any idea how much you've hurt me? I can't trust you anymore, Mick. I think it's time we went our separate ways.
Then I asked Mick if he'd signed the divorce papers. Like a kid reluctantly showing a test he wanted to hide, he pulled out the documents with a crestfallen expression. There was his signature, plain as day. I signed, but are you really going to file them? I pasted on the customer service smile I'd perfected at work.
Thank you for signing. I'll be packing my things and submitting these. Thanks for everything. Goodbye.
Turning my back on Mick's devastated face, I took the signed divorce papers and faced forward. And true to my word, I packed up my belongings that very day, filed the papers, and went back to my childhood home. When he heard what had happened, Danny was furious and heartbroken. But he comforted me and welcomed me back with open arms. I'm so sorry about that no-good husband of yours. But Lena, you've worked so hard. I'm sure you'll find someone better. As long as you can grab hold of happiness in your own way, that's all that matters to me. With tears welling up at Danny's overwhelming love, I nodded. The divorce alone wasn't enough to quell the turmoil in my heart. So I dipped into my savings and consulted a lawyer who specialized in divorce cases, deciding to sue Mick and Amos for alimony. With the evidence from the PI, the process went smoothly. I was able to send each of them a certified letter demanding $50,000 in divorce settlements. Naturally, Mick called to protest over and over. But I stood firm, insisting that it was a legally binding claim and I had no intention of backing down. I would absolutely make them pay up. After that, I stayed with my dad for a while as I put in a transfer request at work. As soon as I had a position lined up at another store, I moved out on my own. Living alone, I slowly began to reclaim my peaceful life. Vanessa reached out soon after everything went down, checking in to see how I was doing. When I told her I'd gotten divorced, she sounded relieved and wished me all the success and happiness in the world. Well, fast forward 3 months. One night, as I got home from work, my cell phone suddenly rang. I checked the screen and saw Mick's name. What on earth could he want at this point? I stared at the screen for a while, debating whether to ignore the call. But when it just kept ringing and ringing, I finally gave in and answered.
Hey, you have to do something. At this rate, I won't be able to keep my job. Hell, I won't even be able to survive.
Mick's voice was on the verge of tears as he launched into a rambling tirade. It seemed that after the alimony payments and the credit card bills he'd let pile up, his debt had ballooned out of control. And now that he couldn't lavish gifts on Amos like before, she'd apparently given up on him too. To make matters worse, because Amos was his junior at the company, the whole office had witnessed his pathetic display when I confronted him with the divorce papers. And once Amos realized Mick was broke, she turned on him, spreading all kinds of rumors around work. Like I went on a sales call with him to learn the ropes and he forcibly dragged me to a hotel, or I heard he's been hitting on every new female hire he can get his hands on. Thanks to that, he was constantly getting dirty looks from his coworkers. Forget a promotion, he was about to be stripped of the accounts he'd been managing. It was no surprise Mick was strapped for cash. The truth was, even though Mick was just a regular salesman, I actually made more than him working at the jewelry store. After we got married, we split the living expenses 50-50ths. But big purchases like furniture or the cost of the wedding itself came out of my savings, or Danny would chip in because he wanted to support us. Still, if he'd budgeted carefully, Mick should have been able to build up some savings of his own. But he had a weakness for women and a spending problem, always buying Amos designer bags and jewelry on a whim. When that wasn't enough, he started supplementing with credit cards. But he couldn't keep up with the payments. Throw in the alimony from the divorce settlement, and his debt just kept growing. As for the nasty rumors, I felt a little bad, but there was no denying he had a thing for younger women. Thinking back, when we first met, I was the youngest one at the mixer that night. And I remember when a new batch of recruits joined the company, mostly young girls in the sales department, he mentioned it to me with a telltale slackness in his cheeks.
My debt keeps piling up and I can't pay it off. Plus I've got creditors hounding me for the divorce settlement. At this rate, I'll be drowning in the stuff. Everyone at work knows about the affair and the promotion is off the table. I'm finished. And you're telling me this why, exactly? The alimony has already been decided, so you need to pay up, even if it's bit by bit. As for the rest, isn't it your own fault for chasing after young women even after you got married?
I shut down Mick's blubbering firmly.
Don't be so cold. We were husband and wife once. Help me out here. Lend me some cash, even a little, or introduce me to a new job, something please.
I was so flabbergasted by his selfish, self-serving demands that I had to laugh. Where did he get off asking me for favors after everything he'd done?
You mean the marriage you single-handedly destroyed? There's honestly nothing I can do for you, so you'll have to handle it yourself.
With that, I ended the call. What the hell was that about? No matter what he said, I couldn't muster up an ounce of sympathy for Mick. Exhausted, I collapsed onto the bed and fell asleep before I knew it. A few weeks after that whole debacle, I was working at the store as usual when the door chimed open. I greeted the customer with my standard welcome, bowing my head. But the instant I looked up, I froze in shock. The person marching straight towards me with purposeful strides was none other than Amos, the woman I'd met once before. Her hair was beautifully styled, no doubt the result of expensive salon treatments. Her makeup was the trendy natural look that actually took a lot of effort to achieve. And if I looked closely, she might have had a bit of plastic surgery done. Slung brazenly over her shoulder was the latest bag from a famous designer brand. There was no way she could afford all that on an entry-level salary. I'd bet anything she was blowing the money and gifts she'd wheedled out of Mick on her appearance. The cloying scent of Amos's perfume wafted all the way to the counter. Her lips pressed into a thin line, she narrowed her eyes so viciously it ruined her youthful beauty, glaring at me with pure ugliness. Then she slammed her hand down on the counter and got right up in my face.
Lena, how could you do this to me? My happiness is in shambles because of your selfish actions.
I blinked hard, not understanding what she was talking about. How had Amos even figured out which store I was working at now? Had she been going around to every branch of the same brand, trying to track me down? If so, her tenacity sent a chill down my spine.
Ever since he ran into you that day, Mick stopped loving me. He used to spoil me rotten, give me anything I wanted. I'm not sure what you're referring to. And please keep your voice down in the store.
Ignoring my attempts to calm her, Amos cut me off and kept right on causing a scene.
And nobody told me he'd be broke if you divorced him. I wanted him to leave his wife for me and marry me instead, because he was loaded and treated me like a princess. This is the worst. And why are you demanding alimony from me too? I just wanted to be loved and happy. You've completely ruined my life.
Amos's shrill, hysterical screaming echoed through the store. Other employees started emerging from the back, and passersby began to gather around as well. This kind of disturbance could seriously damage the store's reputation. I had to do something. But before I could frantically formulate a plan, Amos's hand shot out. She lunged across the counter, trying to grab me.
You! If you just stayed out of the picture from the start, I could have been pampered and adored and blissfully happy forever.
Amos continued to wail and sob. After that, one of the employees ducked into the back room, and it wasn't long before the police arrived on the scene. They promptly took Amos into custody.
Let me go! You're trying to make me out to be some kind of criminal? There's suspicion of interfering with business operations, but we'll get your full statement later.
The officers said calmly as they surrounded Amos and dragged her out of the store. Honestly, the nerve of causing not one but two disturbances in my workplace. It was more than I could stand. I apologized profusely to my coworkers for the trouble I'd caused the store, and thanked the person who'd called the police from the bottom of my heart. Of course they couldn't just let it slide, so a few days later I had to go explain the situation to the higher-ups at corporate. Mick's affair, Amos's outburst, it was all so humiliating to talk about, but this was part of being a responsible adult. In the end, my only punishment was a warning to reaffirm my commitment as a store manager. No concrete penalties. I vowed to buckle down and throw myself into my work with renewed focus. That momentary commotion didn't put a major dent in our sales, and the days passed smoothly. The store was filled with a rainbow of gems, as always: emeralds, topazes, rose quartz, garnets, and the customers who came to purchase them wore the same blissfully happy expressions as ever. It really drove home for me that a jewelry store should be a place of joy. As for Amos, who had caused such a scene, she was questioned by the police afterward. She managed to dodge the charges of interfering with business, but they ended up grilling her about the affair. Word got back to the company via the police that she'd been involved with Mick despite knowing he was married. And she'd tried to cover that up while spreading nasty rumors about him. Now it was her turn to be the office pariah. She was subjected to all kinds of bullying from older women with fearsome reputations, and the rest of her coworkers gave her the cold shoulder. The stress led to mistakes and subpar work. 2 months later, she more or less stopped coming in altogether. A quiet resignation of sorts. As for Mick, even though Amos came out of it worse, the fact remained that he'd cheated. He was still persona non grata at the office. But even with a pay cut, he had to keep earning somehow. So he clung desperately to his position. Then, a few months later, his ballooning debt had him backed into a corner. In a moment of weakness, or maybe temptation from the devil himself, he dipped into company funds. Of course it came out and caused a huge scandal. He was fired on the spot. He went running back to his parents in tears, But Juliet had already heard the whole story from me. She was livid. And of course his father wanted nothing to do with him either. They told him there was nothing left to say and cut him off without hesitation.
We raised you better than to chase some young floozy when you had a good wife at home. You're no son of mine. Don't ever darken our door again.
Juliet reportedly shouted that at him as she tossed him out the front door. I don't know what happened after that, but I never heard about him landing a new job at the same level as his old company. Last I heard, he was scraping by with part-time work while slowly paying off his debts and divorce settlement. But his own living expenses are more than he can handle. It's only a matter of time before it all comes crashing down. As for Juliet, who disowned Mick, she and I actually still keep in touch. Our bond is so strong now, we don't need him as a go-between anymore. I still drop by from time to time for cooking lessons. I'm single again these days, but it's fun to make myself tasty meals. And even more fun to share them with Juliet. Like a pair of gal pals with a bit of an age gap, she and I will keep on getting along famously.
Thank you for your purchase. Wishing you every happiness.
I called out to a customer with a beaming smile as I saw them off at the counter. Today, yet another starry-eyed couple had left with a diamond engagement ring. They looked so blissful walking out arm in arm, I couldn't help but grin myself. My own experiences aside, I never resent the lovebirds and spouses who come into the store. I always want to sincerely celebrate their desire to enshrine their precious feelings in a glittering gem, to carry that promise into their future together. And each time, I'm reminded that this job is my true calling. Now that I've built up a solid track record working in the store, I've been tapped to take on buying trips to Los Angeles and New York. The allure of jewels is endlessly deep, and I'm determined to pour myself into this work with pride from here on out. My husband, Charles, tells me he's going to marry the woman he's been seeing and asks for a divorce. Let's not waste time with property division, just leave quickly. Sharon taunts me, as if she's relishing in my misery. Donald, too, is infatuated with a woman he met at a bar. They don't want to live with me. I'll leave, just as you wish. But before that, I'll give you a piece of my mind. My name is Joy Lynn. Named with the hope of being blessed with much joy, Joy and Joy Lynn, I am a 50-year-old woman whose life hasn't been as joyful as I'd hoped. But now my days are filled with happiness, so I can look back and laugh at the past. Let me take you back to when I was 35. I was about to celebrate my 10th wedding anniversary with Charles. We hadn't been blessed with children, and I found it somewhat painful to hear comments from those around us like, "Do you have any kids?" and "Children are wonderful, you know." Conversations with Charles had dwindled, partly because he had been promoted a few years earlier, became busier with work, and traveled frequently. I was working too, so we hardly saw each other. No wonder we didn't have children. Well, this too is a form of marriage, and it's easier on our minds. Having children or not, it doesn't matter. That's what I thought. One day, our family grew in a way we hadn't expected. It wasn't an angelic baby that arrived. Instead, it was a parents-in-law that seemed like a demon from hell. Apparently, right after we got married, the parents-in-law had been constantly telling Charles that they wanted to live with us. Charles weighed the hassle of living together against the hassle of continually refusing. As a result, he decided that living together would be less of a hassle. Surprisingly rational, or not? Hey, I didn't agree to live together. According to Charles, I'm hardly ever home, so it's fine. It might be fine for you. But still, as Charles said, it's fine. If the parents-in-law are good people. I had a hard time with these parents-in-law even before we started living together. They were the ones who persistently asked me, "When are you having kids?" Sharon would always say,
"The more children you have, the better," every time we met.
"But you only gave birth to Charles, right?" Living with such parents-in-law, it's a stomach-churning story. I wonder how living together will turn out. My expectations were quickly betrayed. Not in a good way. It turned out even worse than I thought. Donald solemnly declared as we started living together. "We won't give you any pension or living expenses." Then Sharon continued with a smile.
"Let's go with that arrangement."
"Wait, what kind of arrangement is that?" Charles also said something like, "We both work, so we can manage without receiving living expenses." So Charles is one of them, too. I had never been particularly dissatisfied with Charles until now. I didn't expect much from a husband even before we got married. I thought a husband who doesn't get angry easily and works hard was good enough. But now, a wave of complaints that I never had before came rushing in. Moreover, as I lived with the parents-in-law for a while, I gradually understood the real reason they wanted to live with us. Donald would often go out somewhere at night. I believed him when he said he was going out to drink with friends. But then, I found a point card from what you'd call a nightclub and a business card with Nancy written on it in the laundry. There are various types of bars, but this was clearly a service industry that directly satisfies a man's desires. I see, he likes Nancy. I can't believe he's still so energetic at his age. I thought. Of course, I meant it in a bad way. No wonder he can't give us living expenses, he's spending it on Nancy. It can't be helped. No way. On the other hand, Sharon gradually started to harass me. Moreover, she was cunning and intensified the harassment gradually, so much so that even I didn't notice at first. At first, I thought she was being kind. I could have endured it if it had just been about the way I fold laundry or season my cooking, but there were times when Sharon called me by the name of Charles's ex-girlfriend. Every time, Sharon would apologize, saying, "I remember her strongly because she was the first girlfriend Charles introduced me to. I didn't do it on purpose. I'm sorry." At first, I thought, Sharon is old, so maybe such things happen. But as it continued, I realized something was off. Speaking of which, every time I took a shower, the bathroom was always dirty. I initially thought the mess in the bathroom was from Charles and the others who had gone in before, but no one complained about the bathroom being dirty. So, without a doubt, it must have been Sharon who was in before me. There were other instances too, like when Sharon, mistakenly thinking everyone had already bathed on a snowy day, unplugged the bathtub, leaving me to shower in the freezing cold. She also once took my favorite necklace from the closet without asking and then lost it. Each time, Sharon would say, "I didn't do it on purpose. I just wasn't thinking. I'm sorry." While it's possible to accidentally shower or call someone by the wrong name, taking jewelry without permission is not something that can be brushed off as a mere oversight. I began to suspect that maybe this was all intentional harassment aimed at me. When I saw Sharon angrily sitting at the dining table saying, "My dinner is late because Joylyn came home late," I finally realized it was indeed harassment, albeit subtle. Come to think of it, Sharon hasn't done any housework since she came to our home. She throws her socks inside out into the laundry and tosses bottles into the trash without removing the labels, adding minor inconveniences every time. She complains if meals are late and if the sheets are messy, and sometimes she even throws things. I finally understood. Our home was indeed graced by the arrival of a baby. 2 of them, in fact, both big and delightfully stubborn. Exhausted from my job as a caregiver, all I wanted was to quickly escape this situation and go to bed, so I kept silently tolerating Sharon's behavior. I didn't have the energy to argue with anyone when I returned home. I wanted to rest as quickly as possible, even if it was just for a moment. While I was exhausted and didn't notice at first, it seemed that Sharon knew about Donald's night outings. When an actress appeared on TV, Sharon persistently asked Donald,
Donald, don't you like girls like her?
"You do, don't you?" The actress's name was Nancy. The same as the girl from the bar. Donald looked pale. After that incident, I asked Sharon once,
"Are you okay with Donald going out like that?"
Sharon replied,
"If I get a divorce, I'll be someone who has a divorce history at this age, right?"
"That's miserable, and it looks bad to society." "Of course, I don't like it."
"But he's just playing with professionals at the bar, right?"
"If he's not serious, I can accept it." She wasn't holding back from divorce because of her concern for Donald, but rather she feared becoming someone with a history of divorce. I couldn't understand it. Turning a blind eye to infidelity must be causing her significant internal stress. And Sharon's outlet for that stress was harassing me. By harassing me, not only could she vent her stress, but she could also avoid doing housework. It was like killing two birds with one stone. I was certain. I knew why Sharon had insisted on living with Charles. Since living with the parents-in-law, Charles increasingly made excuses not to come home, saying he had to work overtime. This house was rotten from the roots to the pillars. At this rate, even I might end up crushed under the rotten floorboards. It happened one day, about 6 months after we started living together. Charles, who rarely had the same day off, said something unexpected. "Please, let's get a divorce." It was a bolt from the blue. It turns out, Charles had been having an affair with a classmate for a long time. He even said he wanted to marry this person, and I had no clue. Apparently, they started dating just before he got promoted. I thought he was working hard for our sake, but could it have been for his classmate? Was it my fault for not paying attention to Charles's behavior, using my exhaustion as an excuse? I thought affairs only happened on TV and to people like Donald. No, maybe it's natural for Charles to cheat, given that Donald does it too.
"Once this house is ready, my girlfriend and I are moving in. You can take your things and leave," Charles declared.
Sharon asked,
"What's going to happen to us?" "You can stay, my girlfriend doesn't mind sharing," Charles responded. "What a nice girl." "Joylyn, don't let her get away with it if she asks for property division. We're going to use this house and everything in it." Donald chimed in. "Yeah, she's really a good girl. Especially if she's cuter than Joylyn."
Sharon shot Donald a look as if to say,
"There you go again with women."
But Charles and Donald just laughed. "These people are hopeless." I replied, "All right.
I'm fine with a divorce. There's a memorial ceremony in Atlanta soon, right?"
"Can you wait until then?"
"Planning on enjoying the feast at the memorial ceremony, are you?"
How pathetic.
"There's no way I'm taking a woman who's divorcing me."
Just leave already. Who's the pathetic one here? Who cares about the food? Despite everything, Sharon and I, the only women in the room and both cheated on, can't seem to get along.
"No, I was planning to move out on that day. Going back home is a bit embarrassing since I was cheated on. Finding a place and handling the paperwork takes time. I thought it would work out around then."
Charles, not Sharon, replied condescendingly,
"If that's the case, fine."
Cheating and then acting all high and mighty. Don't underestimate me. I'll destroy everything. A week passed, and the long-awaited day of revenge finally arrived. That day, my parents-in-law and Charles left the house early in the morning to attend a memorial ceremony in Atlanta. They planned to return by evening. All right then. Let's give it a try. The garbage collection service I had hired arrived. I had them load all the furniture in the house into the truck. The sofa, the microwave, Charles and parents-in-law's bed, and Sharon's clothes that had accumulated since moving in, Charles's favorite new vacuum cleaner, even the refrigerator and its contents. All of it gone. Ah, minimalism is wonderful. With each item thrown away, it felt like my troubles were disappearing. Next, the movers came to transport my important belongings to my new place. By evening, the house was empty. The front door made a sound. It seemed Charles and the others had returned. I decided to greet them one last time as a good wife and stood at the entrance with a smile. "What, you're still here?" Charles frowned openly. So did my parents-in-law.
"Oh, that's harsh. It's the last time, so it's fine to see each other's faces before leaving, right? I wanted to see your face."
"Huh? You still care about me?" Charles blushes slightly. He chuckles. "What's the big deal?" "Fine. Let's have a meal together one last time, shall we?" Charles, strangely in a good mood, heads towards the living room saying this, followed by Sharon, who looks exasperated, saying,
"Charles is so sweet."
Donald, on the other hand, turns to me with a proud look, saying, "That's my son." I'm baffled. Having a meal, huh? Would have been a nice way to part if there was anything left to eat.
Huh? What? What? Ah!
Understanding the meaning of my words, Charles, upon opening the living room door, lets out a silent exclamation. Sharon, annoyed, peeks into the living room after Charles and exclaims just like him.
"What? Ah!"
Donald does the same.
Wait, Joylyn, WHY, the fridge, no, even the furniture. Appliances too. Why is there nothing anywhere?
Of course, I threw them out. The house feels much bigger now, doesn't it? I thought it would be bad to leave old furniture for your new life with your girlfriend. Consider it my parting gift.
Threw them out. Why? Weren't you preparing to move?
I've already moved. You throw away things you don't need when you move, right? Have you forgotten? Most of the things we bought when we got married were purchased with my money. Nothing bad will happen just because I, who didn't need them, threw them away. At my words, Charles points at me, his mouth moving but no words coming out. He seems too shocked to speak. With this, I'll forego any division of property. Well, there's hardly anything to divide anyway. Sharon, furious at my smile, says, "What have you done?" I'll return that phrase to your foolish son. There are limits to indecency, like cheating while having a wife and then saying to leave because you're remarrying. Wasn't your upbringing at fault? How could you speak to me like that? You are such a terrible daughter-in-law. Do you still consider yourself my mother-in-law? To me, you're just another old lady. I speak with a malicious smile, and Sharon mutters, "So ungracious." Shaking with anger. It's a secret that seeing Sharon angry is starting to be a bit fun. Don't you remember? If I ask for a division of this house, you can't refuse, can you? Without the house, where would you two strangers live? You sold your family home, right? Yes, the PILs had sold their house when they moved in with us. We won't need it anymore, they had said. So, this house was absolutely necessary for them. They sided with their son's affair over his wife, probably thinking, as long as there's a house with a housemaid, anything goes. Hearing my words, perhaps feeling rushed, Donald intervenes. Well, let's settle this amicably, pretending to be a good person. Yes, let's do that. Let's proceed calmly, just like the old just like Donald suggests. Exactly, you know what I'm talking about, Joy Lynn. Of course. By the way, Donald, wasn't your cell phone broken today? Huh? Oh, yeah. I realized it after leaving the house, it wouldn't turn on. If charging doesn't work, I guess I'll have to consult the store. There's no need for that. Your cell phone is right here. Saying that, I pulled Donald's cell phone from my pocket. Huh? Two identical phones? What's going on? Donald is puzzled. I switched the phones just before you left today. The one I have is the real one, and the one you had is a used one I bought and removed the battery. So, it won't turn on. What? Since you aren't tech savvy, I thought you'd just give up easily thinking it's broken or out of battery. It seems like a huge success. Smiling, I get asked by Donald. Why would you do that? Why, you wonder? Well, I have no clue. Speaking of which, you received an email today from your beloved Nancy saying she had a good time the other day. You email each other daily, right? I'm so jealous of your close friendship. What? Donald gasps, while Sharon glares at him. So, Donald, you were out with Nancy the other day? Woohoo! More lovey-dovey than with Sharon. But you should put a lock on your phone if you're cheating. You'll get caught easily. See, stop it, Joy Lynn, this. But I thought cheating is wrong. Charles cheated on me, and it hurt. I know exactly how Sharon feels. So, I did something nice at the end. I texted Nancy. I'm bored. Let's break up. She was furious. I was just dealing with this old man because he conveniently gives me money. Good thing you broke up safely. Oh, by the way, this is Nancy, Sharon. Your enemy, take a good look. Saying that, I showed everyone a photo of Nancy and Donald as I returned the phone. That's when it happened. Charles showed a stern expression no one had seen before. Why? My girlfriend is. What? Everyone but Charles gasped. What's going on, Charles? What are you to Nancy? No, that's my line, Dad. Why are you taking pictures with Nancy? Because I'm her boyfriend, obviously. No, Nancy is my girlfriend. Isn't your girlfriend your classmate? We just met at a bar and started hanging out. Who would have thought that father and son were dating the same person? This development was also surprising for me. Ignoring Sharon and me, who were in shock, the men started a pointless argument about who was more suitable to be Nancy's boyfriend, which eventually escalated to a full-blown brawl, pulling each other's hair. The brawl ended when Charles pulled out a significant amount of Donald's precious, thinning hair. After a glance at the soulless face of Donald, I loudly declared, "Well, I'm off to my new place. Thank you for everything. I'll be claiming compensation for the affair next time. Bye." I had said there would be no property division, but I didn't mention compensation. Sharon realized that this was a serious affair and, swinging the bag she was holding, began furiously beating Donald in a rage. Donald stood there, head hung low, as if he had burnt out completely, unable to process everything happening all at once. Watching this living hell unfold beside me, I couldn't stop smiling as I hopped on my beloved scooter and left the scene. Although it's a far stretch, in my mind, I felt like Tom Cruise in Top Gun. Oh, it's been a while since I've ridden down such a refreshing night road. This is the best. Later on, when I proposed divorce, including the alimony, Charles said, "Please wait on the divorce." It seems that Sharon is also considering divorce, and there is a possibility that everyone might lose their homes or their circumstances might change, so he wants to save as much money as possible. He said things like, "Don't you think it's pitiful for us, who once lived together, to face such a difficult situation?" And, "We need money now, but..." I didn't care, so I proceeded with the divorce talks without discussion and took as much money as I could get from Charles and his affair partner. When claiming the alimony, I felt a bit like an outlaw, but I hadn't done anything wrong. I had just done what was natural. Well, maybe tampering with someone's phone was slightly wrong. In the end, around the same time as our divorce, it seemed that Sharon also divorced Donald. Apparently, Donald and Nancy's affair had been going on for over 5 years, and Sharon couldn't forgive that they had a relationship in private as well. I don't quite understand why bar hopping is forgivable but private relationships aren't. I thought there are various forms of marriage. Well, in the end, we're not married anymore anyway. Donald was sued for alimony by Sharon, and Charles was sued for alimony by me. So the saying blood will out held true, and the parents-in-law are now all scattered. Sharon, having been cheated on by Donald, seemed to have grown to despise men in general, including Charles, who had abandoned me in a similar manner. As a result, Charles and Sharon, after her divorce, are slowly becoming distant, though they do have minimal conversations. Donald, jobless, turned to Charles for help but was rejected, as Charles himself was barely scraping by. Charles is juggling multiple jobs, while Sharon, who had been a housewife since her early marriage, is experiencing work for the first time with a part-time job. Donald became a part-time worker living in a cheap hotel. Charles, eager to remarry Nancy, learned that she wasn't interested. Nancy saw both Charles and Donald as mere extensions of her bar work, as convenient sources of money. It turned out that Nancy had other men besides Charles in the same capacity. Charles, having been classmates with her, mistook her for being serious and believed she was his destiny. But in reality, it was a foolish and trivial story. In the end, both men were deemed unnecessary by Nancy, even as convenient sources of money, and were discarded. From my perspective, I thought, since I'm leaving, might as well destroy everything in the process. Just as I aimed. I'm very satisfied having witnessed this spectacular collapse of a family. No one in that family valued each other, only caring about themselves. So, the outcome was, in a way, inevitable. Essentially, they were a family in name only, lacking any compassion. Now, I think it was good that I got away from that household. On the other hand, while I still come home exhausted from work every day, living alone has freed up my time as I no longer need to allocate it for someone else. I have more freedom than when I was married. Back when I was married, I hardly had time to meet my college friends, but now I can travel with them on my days off and even have time for my hobbies. In college, I was part of the choir, so I decided to join a karaoke club. It seems that one can continue to improve in music, no matter the age. I consistently win at the club's competitions and even earn cash prizes. Thanks to that, my wallet is always warmly filled. Hee hee. At the facility where I work, my colleagues suggested hosting a karaoke recreation event since I'm good at it, and it was a huge hit. I received many compliments like "you're so good," and was thrilled to bring smiles to the residents through my personal hobby, something I hadn't expected. By the way, my go-to performances are Unchained Melody and My Heart Will Go On. The lyrics of older songs are just so wonderful. I don't really understand recent songs, but I guess I should study up. Though my days aren't glamorous, I'm surrounded by friendly colleagues, trustworthy friends, and kind residents who feel like family beyond work boundaries. Finally, it seems like I've become the Joylyn I was meant to be. From now on, I aim to be someone who not only receives joy, but also shares it with others. All right. Let's do our best at work today. I'll wholeheartedly celebrate the residents' birthdays.
I have $1.50. Can you take me to where Mommy is in the sky?
Standing in front of the bus driver, little Eliza pulled out her wallet from her backpack and offered the money to the bus driver.
That's...
Confronted with Eliza's earnest gaze, the bus driver looked at us, bewildered.
Eliza, come here.
I hugged Eliza and explained that it takes more than a bus ride to go where Mommy is now. That Mommy is in the sky because of something I said too casually. Believing my words, Eliza had been desperately figuring out a way to see Mommy. I thought I was being supportive, but I hadn't understood Eliza's feelings at all. Learning of Eliza's thoughts made my heart feel like it was about to burst. All I could do was hug Eliza and wait for her to calm down. Then, a voice from behind.
Ready to go?
Huh? Both Eliza and I looked up in surprise. There stood my husband, Charles, with a stern face.
Let's go. Charles, wait, where are we going?
Without answering my question, Charles, still looking grim, dragged Eliza to a bus parked nearby and boarded. My name is Stephanie. I met Charles, who is 2 years my senior, through a friend when I was 20. Back then, I worked at a deli. One day, right at 11 a.m. when the store opened, 2 men entered. Stephanie?
Whoa, you scared me. You work around here?
My office is about a 10-minute walk from here. We have a meeting in the afternoon, so we thought we'd grab an early lunch. Ah, this is my colleague, Charles. He recommended this deli. Next to my friend Raymond, a man named Charles greeted me. Ah. I know this guy. He comes in about once a week and always buys a sandwich.
You come here a lot, don't you? Thanks for always coming.
After I thanked him politely, Charles blushed. Seeing Charles's reaction, my friend smirked. Charlie is a really capable guy, someone I look up to. He's quiet but has always been patient and supportive. Stephanie has a gentle, almost animal-like character, like a younger sister. I have a feeling you two will get along. What are you talking about? Come on, let's buy and head back. With that, Charles picked up 2 sandwiches and handed them to me. That'll be $8 for both. As I was handing back the change, my fingers brushed against Charles's palm.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry for what Raymond said. Let's go. Watching Charles walk away, with Raymond waving goodbye beside him, I noticed Charles's earlobes had turned red. Despite being older, it was somehow endearing. I couldn't help but smile. From that day on, we became aware of each other. Thank you for always providing delicious lunches.
No, thank you for coming to buy them. You like salmon, right?
Charles nodded shyly. Would you like to go see it together? One day, Charles offered me movie tickets.
This is exactly what I wanted to see. Wow, I'm so happy.
Seeing me happy made Charles smile shyly. After that, we went out together several times and eventually started dating. Let's make a picnic basket tomorrow and go for a picnic. What do you want to eat? Salmon?
I like salmon, but maybe French fries.
Choosing his words carefully, Charles shyly confessed that French fries were actually his favorite.
French fries aren't in a sandwich.
I burst out laughing at his unexpected confession. No, I didn't want to hold up the line for other customers. Charles, as usual, spoke shyly. Clumsy with few words and shy, Charles possessed a kindness that was considerate of others. Though often perceived as quiet and stiff, his kindness always came through to me. And I wanted to be with him forever. Fortunately, Charles seemed to feel the same way, and when I was 22, I married Charles. The following year, our son Sean was born. It was evident how much Charles adored Sean. Whenever Sean cried, Charles would immediately come running to quietly and restlessly hold him.
Thank you, Charles. If you talk to him, he'll soon recognize your voice too. Talk to him, like, what should I say?
Coughing and handing Sean to me, Charles scratched his head and went into his room. He must be embarrassed. I found his awkward expressions of love endearing. Eventually, Sean became a schoolboy.
Dad, listen.
Today at school. Is that so? Can I learn baseball with my friends? Do what you like. Even though Sean spoke excitedly, Charles would listen but usually end conversations with nods or a word. To me, who understood Charles, it was nothing unusual, but as Sean grew, he began to speak less to his father.
Sean, did you message Charles that you got into your first choice college?
No, tell him for me, Mom. Dad's not interested in me.
That's not true. Because the Lucky Charm. Lucky Charm? Well, Charles is quiet with everyone, but he really does care about Sean.
Really? Charles had prepared a lucky charm for Sean's college entrance exams. Don't tell him it's from me. Embarrassed, Charles said this as he indifferently handed me the lucky charm. I ended up giving it to Sean, but it was clear that Charles, more than anyone, cared for and supported Sean. I hoped that someday Sean would recognize Charles's difficult-to-understand way of expressing love. Watching Sean's grown-up back, I couldn't help but wish for that. After leaving home to go to college, Sean got married at 23 to Helen, whom he had been dating since his university days. The night before the wedding, looking for Charles who hadn't come to bed yet, I found him alone in the living room, drinking and looking through an album. He's grown up. I could barely hear Charles's hoarse voice. Trying not to be noticed by Charles, who was flipping through the album while sniffling, I quietly returned to the bedroom. The following year, Sean and Helen had a beautiful little girl named Eliza. Sean's family lived in an apartment an hour's drive from us, and they always invited us for celebrations, allowing us to witness Eliza's growth up close. Eliza, it's Grandma. Holding Eliza, she would brightly smile back. Eliza, resembling Helen, had clear and distinct features. She wasn't shy and was so adorable that I was completely smitten with her. And beside me, Charles silently offered his index finger to Eliza. When Eliza grabbed Charles's finger, he finally allowed himself a slight smile.
Grandpa loves you very much, Eliza.
As I spoke for him, Charles's face turned bright red. Eliza stared intently at Charles. The growth of a grandchild seemed even faster than that of one's own child. Before we knew it, Eliza was walking and talking. When alone with Eliza, Charles would softly talk to her with a gentle smile, but he seemed embarrassed to be seen doing so by others.
Grandpa, Grandpa. Eliza, Grandpa is busy. Let's play over here with me.
Even when Eliza called him in front of Sean and Helen, Charles, embarrassed, would escape to his room. I watched this with a mix of amusement and exasperation. However, Sean sighed beside me. Does Charles have a hard time with little kids?
I think he just doesn't like the noise. I barely have any memories of playing with him either.
Maybe we shouldn't bring her over.
That's not true at all.
Hearing Sean and Helen's conversation, I vehemently denied it.
Charles cares deeply about both Sean and Eliza.
Really? With a look of skepticism, Sean stared at the closed door of Charles's room. I wished the family could understand the kind, family-oriented man that Charles was, but how could I make them see? I was at a loss. Afterward, Sean seemed to continue harboring feelings about Charles's behavior, but Helen saw things differently. This is a matching towel for you and Eliza, if you'd like to use it. Helen handed Charles a bath towel. a cute towel with a bunny pattern. Far removed from Charles's stiff personality, I couldn't help but laugh. "Ah, thank you." That's all Charles said before he quickly retreated to his room. I wondered if Helen noticed the slight softening in Charles's expression. Helen continued to make an effort, speaking to Charles whenever she could.
Helen, thank you for everything with Charles.
I expressed my gratitude to her when Charles wasn't around. Eliza loves Charles so much. Children have sharp instincts, don't they? I wanted to get to know Charles better myself, so I've been trying to engage more actively, she said cheerily. I was glad Helen was such a wonderful person. Sports days, school performances, summer vacations, Christmas. At least these 4 times, we could meet Sean's family, and each time, we were overjoyed to see Eliza growing up healthy and happy. However, our happiness was abruptly shattered. Helen was killed in a car accident on her way home. Hello, Mom, Helen. Helen. It was a pleasantly cool autumn evening, just a month before Eliza's 6th birthday, when Sean called us. We rushed to the hospital. There, we found Helen, already cold. Beside her was Sean, sobbing uncontrollably in public. It seemed Eliza was still at the childcare center.
Mom, stay with Sean. I'll go pick up Eliza from the childcare center.
With that, Charles, while worried about Sean, left the hospital room. It was after midnight by the time Sean and I got home, having dealt with the hospital, police, and various procedures. Welcome back.
Where's Eliza?
She's sleeping in my bed. I made sure she had dinner and took a shower.
Thank you.
The sink was left with unwashed chopping boards and pans. Sorry. I fell asleep after putting her to bed. I'll clean it up now.
No, I'll do it. Thank you, Charles.
Helen was particularly careful with Eliza's meals due to her allergies. So Charles, who rarely cooked, must have prepared dinner for Eliza. Charles had never taken care of his granddaughter by himself before, but I thought he did a great job. Back home, Charles silently stayed by Sean's side as he broke down crying again. Eliza faced Helen's body for the first time at the funeral. She looked as if she was sleeping, beautifully dressed.
Daddy, why is Mommy sleeping here?
Unable to bear Eliza's words, Sean ran out. Eliza watched her father leave with a puzzled look. Mommy's not going to wake up anymore. She's gone to heaven.
Did Mommy go alone? Take me with you.
Eliza held on to her mom's hand. Mommy, let's go home. You'll catch a cold sleeping here. At just 5 years old, Eliza couldn't understand that her mother would never wake up again. Neither Charles nor I knew how to explain it to her, so we just stood there, helpless. Somehow, we made it through the funeral and returned home. I was worried about Sean, who seemed numb and drained of tears.
Hey, Sean, why don't we live together? With 3 adults, we can properly take care of Eliza.
Seeing Sean so shut down and shocked, we offered to live with him. Sean nodded silently, and that settled it. We would live together.
Wow, I get to live with Grandpa and Grandma? Yay! I hope Mommy comes back soon.
Eliza, not understanding anything, was happy with the idea. Leaving already? What about breakfast? I'll eat at the office. I'll be busy for a while, so don't bother preparing dinner. Sean left at 6 a.m. and returned at 11 p.m. By the time he got home, the 3 of us were already asleep. He wouldn't talk to anyone, just took a shower and went to bed. And left before Eliza woke up. Sean seemed to be immersing himself in work on purpose, trying not to think about Helen. Give this to Sean. Worried about Sean, Charles bought a box full of the chocolate Sean used to love.
From Charles.
I didn't know if Sean was eating properly at work, but every morning I gave him the chocolate along with a sandwich for breakfast. Every morning, Eliza would wake up and ask if Mommy had come back.
Mommy's in the sky now. We can't see her, but she's watching over you, Eliza.
Each time, I took Eliza in front of the portrait and explained.
Let's say good morning to Mommy.
Good morning. Eliza looked unconvinced, and I forced a smile.
Come back soon.
I heard Eliza's whisper, but I tried to override her words with my own.
Today, we'll go pick flowers with Grandma.
Since Helen's death, Eliza hadn't gone to childcare. She didn't want to go without Helen, who always took her there. With her mother gone and seeing her father rarely, Eliza must be feeling insecure. Thinking this, I decided to stay by Eliza's side as much as possible to distract her.
If you keep looking down, Helen will scold you. She said there was nothing happier than seeing you and Eliza smile.
I tried to cheer up Sean, who remained withdrawn, but mentioning Helen's name brought silent tears to his eyes. I'm sorry. But you're Eliza's father. I know. After saying that, Sean quickly left the house. Meanwhile, Eliza, still not doubting that Helen would return, kept asking about her mom every day. Each time, I told her Helen was up in the sky and took her in front of the portrait. Mommy can hear you from here, why don't you talk to her? But Eliza remained silent, just staring at her mom's portrait. How can these two get through this? I sighed deeply. One day, while watching a children's show with Eliza, she said, Grandma, give me some money.
Eh? Money? What for?
I want to take the bus. The show we were watching was about a little girl traveling to various places by bus. Flying through the sky, crossing rainbow bridges, running underwater. Anything was possible, and she could go anywhere. It was a story full of dreams. Then, if you help out, I'll give you some pocket money. Let's save up and take the bus, okay?
Okay.
I saw Eliza's beaming smile for the first time in a long while. Where does Eliza want to go? It might be nice to take a trip together. Maybe it would help Sean feel a bit better. Thinking this, I smiled fondly at Eliza, who was eager to help out.
Grandpa, Grandma, we're going to take the bus.
A few days later, Eliza appeared in front of us, backpack on and hat in place, all ready to go. Are we going today?
Yes. We have to hurry, or we'll be late.
Charles and I exchanged looks. Pulled along by Eliza's determination, we found ourselves heading to the bus stop.
We're just going to look at the buses today.
I hadn't planned anything yet and told Eliza so, but she wasn't listening. Maybe seeing the buses would calm her down. With that thought, we took Eliza to the bus stop. Upon arriving and spotting the bus driver, Eliza ran off.
Running is dangerous.
Charles and I hurried after her. Reaching the bus driver quickly, Eliza pulled out her wallet from her backpack and offered the money to the bus driver. I have $1.50. Please take me to where Mommy is in the sky.
That's...
Faced with Eliza's earnest gaze, the confused bus driver looked at us.
Eliza, come here.
I hugged Eliza and explained that it takes more than a bus ride to go where Mommy is, that Mommy is in the sky because of something I said too casually.
We can go. We can go anywhere. I want to go see Mommy.
Eliza cried, arguing that since the bus on TV could fly, taking the bus meant she could go see Mommy in the sky. Believing my words, Eliza had been desperately figuring out a way to see Helen. I thought I was being supportive, but I hadn't understood Eliza's feelings at all. Learning of Eliza's thoughts made my heart feel like it was about to burst. All I could do was hug Eliza and wait for her to calm down. Ready to go? About 5 minutes had passed when a voice came from behind. Huh? Both Eliza and I involuntarily looked up. There stood Charles, with a stern face. Let's go.
Charles, wait, where to?
Without answering my question, Charles, still with a stern expression, firmly grabbed Eliza's arm. Ignoring Eliza's surprise and ensuing tears, Charles dragged her to a bus that was stopped nearby. We're leaving. I hurriedly followed the two of them onto the bus. Soon after, the bus started moving, and we took our seats. Eliza didn't understand what was happening, but her tears had stopped. In the empty bus, we sat in silence. Charles, where are we going? Having regained a bit of composure, I asked Charles about our destination. You'll see soon. Charles said only that, shifting his gaze outside the window. I turned to Eliza. Eliza, want a candy? Eliza nodded. There's the sea over there. The tunnel's long. To break the awkward silence, I made an effort to sound cheerful. After about 30 minutes. We're getting off at the next stop. Charles said this and began walking as soon as the automatic door opened. Holding Eliza's hand so we wouldn't fall behind, I followed him. Charles left the bus stop and got into a taxi that was waiting. Holding Eliza's hand, which looked anxious, we also entered the taxi. Charles must have told the driver the destination before we boarded. Because the taxi started moving as soon as we got in.
Going out with Grandpa and Grandma is nice, isn't it?
The driver spoke to Eliza through the rearview mirror. Eliza didn't reply with much enthusiasm, but the driver continued. There's a place nearby that sells delicious cookies. You should ask them to buy you some.
Okay.
Hearing about cookies, Eliza's expression lightened slightly, and the driver smiled kindly at her. After about 15 minutes, the taxi stopped in front of a cemetery. I know this place.
That's great. You remember coming here before?
Yes, we had been here once before. But since we had come by car last time, I didn't realize where Charles was taking us until partway through. Without waiting for us, Charles walked through the cemetery and stopped in front of a grave, beckoning Eliza. Knowing it was a familiar place made Eliza a bit more at ease, and she ran to Charles. Sorry we couldn't explain properly last time we were here. Your mom is sleeping here, Eliza. Charles squatted down to meet Eliza's gaze and spoke slowly. The truth we had been vague about to Eliza. That Helen had died in a traffic accident and that we can never meet people who have passed away again was explained by Charles to Eliza. Eliza, trying to hold back her tears, listened intently to Charles. Even though we can't see Mommy, she's always near you, cheering you on, Eliza. As I fought back tears, I put on my bravest smile for Eliza. Mommy said she's happiest when she sees Eliza and Daddy smiling. Come on, tell Mommy something fun. I admired Charles for his deep understanding of Helen. Mommy, I've always wanted to see you. I've been so lonely. Eliza, seemingly unable to think of a cheerful story on the spot, began to express her feelings little by little. I did a lot of chores because I wanted to see Mommy. She talked about working hard on chores to earn bus fare to see Mommy, learning how to wash dishes, and experiencing her first bus ride through a long tunnel. As she spoke, Eliza's expression gradually became brighter. Ah, there's a cookie shop nearby that Mommy liked. Eliza remembered what the taxi driver had mentioned earlier. Then, let's buy some on the way back and eat them together. Is Mommy coming home with us? Mommy is always near Eliza. You just can't see her. But she's there, so let's talk a lot at home, okay?
Yeah.
Seeing Eliza's spirits lifted, Charles and I felt relieved. That evening, Eliza was in front of the portrait. The cookies were delicious.
have some, Mommy.
Good night. Eliza, who rarely talks in her sleep, said something that night.
Mommy, let's race to the other side.
It seemed like she was playing with Helen in her dreams.
Charles, thank you.
I was grateful to Charles for having the courage to explain the truth to Eliza. Now it's Sean's turn. I had no confidence in cheering up Sean. A week passed. I had fallen asleep while putting Eliza to bed and woke up around 11 p.m. Oh no, I still haven't washed the dishes. Walking down the hallway to the kitchen, I heard a voice from the living room. Have a drink with me. Peeking inside, I saw Sean had just returned, holding a bag in one hand.
I'm too tired.
Sit down. Charles firmly made Sean sit and poured him a glass of whiskey. We went with Eliza to Helen's grave the other day. Charles told Sean about how Eliza had saved up money from doing chores to take the bus to see Mommy, how she cried at the bus stop wanting to see Mommy, and how they had explained the truth to Eliza, who understood.
Eliza has managed to sort out her feelings and is now living looking forward. It's about time you did too.
Sean interrupted Charles by placing his glass down.
It's not that easy to just switch feelings.
Sean tearfully argued that he still couldn't accept Helen's death and had been intentionally immersing himself in work to avoid thinking about her.
I'm not a child. I can't just accept it like Eliza. You can't possibly understand how I feel.
Charles glared at Sean, who was screaming irrationally, losing his composure.
It's not because she's a child that she accepted it quickly. Eliza struggled for a long time before she could accept it. On top of losing Helen, her father, you, weren't around either. The one Eliza wanted to rely on the most was her father, you.
Indeed, Eliza, though she never verbalized it, always cared about Sean. No matter how much we were there for her, the sudden separation from the family she had lived with must have been incredibly unsettling. Hearing Charles's words, Sean calmed down a bit.
We're at an age where anything can happen. When that time comes, who will protect Eliza? Only her father, you.
Sean looked down, tears streaming.
Pour all your love into Eliza, for Helen's sake. We're a family, so we should spend time together and get through this together.
Before long, tears were also streaming down Charles's face. Charles's words must have struck a chord with Sean. Making sure not to be seen by the two men, I quietly returned to the bedroom. The next morning, all the dishes in the sink were washed, and 2 glasses were set out to dry. Thanks for washing up. Did you have a drink with Sean?
Yeah.
What did you talk about? I don't remember, was too drunk. Charles, opening his newspaper wider to avoid the question, showed he could keep the confidentiality of a man-to-man conversation. This was another aspect of Charles that I appreciated anew. After that, Sean began to eat breakfast at home.
Good morning, Daddy.
Eliza, overjoyed to see her dad in the morning, was lovingly patted on the head by Sean. Eliza, want to go to the childcare center together?
Let's go.
Knowing her dad was by her side, Eliza, who had been skipping childcare, started going again. I'll do my best at childcare, so Daddy, you do your best at work too. When you come back, let's talk with Mommy, the 3 of us.
Okay.
Eliza's cheerfulness was a salvation for Sean, who was becoming more positive. As promised, when Sean could come home early, he and Eliza would talk about their day in front of Helen's portrait. Eliza was such a cheerful child. No matter how hard we, as grandparents, tried, we couldn't match the impact of a father. Thanks to Sean, Eliza was able to regain her true self. Finally accepting his role as a single parent, Sean started looking for a new job to cherish his time with Eliza. He sought a company that allowed remote work and was friendly to parenting generations.
Don't overdo it. Rely on us. Just by staying cheerful, you keep Eliza cheerful too. Thank you.
Seeing Sean, who had fully embraced his role as a father, I felt a sense of reliability. A year into his job search, Sean finally landed a position at his desired company. Thanks to this, he could now attend school events held on weekdays and spend Sundays enjoying activities or visiting places Eliza wanted to go.
What do you guys talk about when you drink together?
On Sundays, after Eliza had gone to bed, Charles and Sean would invariably start drinking. Curious about their conversations, I asked, but apparently they didn't talk about anything specific. Well, that's understandable when Charles is involved. Charles, who silently and kindly watches over everything. Surely, his kindness must be felt by Sean as well. Perhaps for a father and son who understand each other, words are unnecessary. I found their relationship somewhat enviable.
Eliza, what happened to this shoe?
One day, I noticed an unfamiliar, cute pair of shoes at the entrance.
Grandpa bought them for me. They're my favorite sky blue.
Charles, sitting on the sofa, blatantly avoided my gaze. It's fine to buy them, but why did Charles look away from me?
These pencil cases, notebooks, socks, and hats were also bought by Grandpa. So many?
Indeed, last Saturday, when I was at the optometrist, they had mentioned going out together. Probably, Charles couldn't resist his adorable granddaughter's requests. Imagining the scene, I couldn't help but laugh.
What's so funny? Nothing. Grandpa is just so kind.
Eliza smiled and nodded.
Grandpa told me to be like Mommy, so I have to try my best.
Like Helen? According to Eliza, Charles had told her to admire Helen for her thoughtfulness, her ability to treat everyone equally, and most importantly, her conviction that her family's happiness was her own. The towel Mommy gave me, Grandpa still keeps it safe. He said it's his treasure. I was surprised that Charles had so clearly expressed his feelings to Eliza. Charles, who empathizes with others and tailors his approach to suit them. Whether it's silently drinking with Sean or explicitly communicating with Eliza, both aspects are charming facets of Charles. Now, over 30 years into our marriage, discovering new aspects of Charles's charm, I've fallen for him all over again.
Come on, hurry up. Daddy, don't forget to buy the cookies.
Today is December 7th, Helen's monthly anniversary. We've made it a tradition to visit Helen's grave as a family of 4 on this day. This time, at Eliza's request, we took the bus together. Eliza, braving the cold to clean the grave.
Thank you.
Did I look like Mommy?
You did look like Mommy.
Eliza, praised by Charles, was visibly delighted. Sean watched Eliza with a smile. Our family can smile like this. So Helen, please be at ease. Please continue to watch over us 4. Opening my eyes, it felt as if Helen was also enveloped in this warm atmosphere with us.